It should be included. There should be at least one twist in a class, if not two, if you're kind of focusing on it as a posture, let's say. But in terms of our limbering and, kind of planting the seed earlier on in the class, there's lots of ways that we can include more mobile twists that can help us prepare for those deeper twists that are happening later on in the class. In my experience, unless I am teaching a series around twists, which is what I'll do at certain times of the year, then I would be maybe doing a standing or a seated twist within my practice, but I'll be doing twists in the limbering section and a gentle twist at the end. So I wouldn't really be including that many within a class structure unless I am emphasizing it as a theme. So if I'm really, like I said about coming out of the winter into the spring, twists were featuring throughout my classes. Whereas now we're moving into spring, I've been focusing a little bit more on back bending. I still have twists within the practice, but I'm not spending as much time on them. They're still there because you need to have the full range of movement for the spine. So you can have them as a thematic inquiry in themselves, or you're planting them in, you're peppering them in throughout the practice, along with your forward bending, back bending, and lateral. But they kind of come in at the end. Like when you're teaching beginners, the first thing you kind of want to establish them to do safely is to fold forwards safely, to be able to bend their knees, hinge at the hips. We're doing a lot of different kind of ranges of movement that can then support the twists. So the twists are coming after we've really established a lot of safe ranges of movement. So that's kind of why in a class plan you'll be focusing on it more as opposed towards the end of the class, having done some limbering. So it's not something that you're doing all the time, because you can just twist and twist and twist and then you'll like maybe injure yourself. So that's why really a general class shouldn't have loads and loads of twisting in it, because it's just there's lots of contraindications like we've already discussed. So I'm going to show you some ways to limber, and then we'll look at a few key poses, and we'll kind of maybe break them down a bit as well. So I'm just going to start from standing. And to begin with, I mentioned earlier about thinking about the midline. So finding a position with the feet about a hip distance and not wider, okay? Something that's within that hip distance, because we want to bring ourselves into this idea of having a midline. And the feet are parallel to one another and the shoulders are relaxed away from the ears. Just going to start to get a sense of how I feel in my body, get a sense of my feet anchoring down to the ground. So I start to feel grounded in myself. And then I want to notice my breathing. So as I breathe in, just noticing the breath moving in through the body. As I breathe out, perhaps starting to become aware of the breath moving down the body towards the soles of the feet. So obviously you can release the knees a little, have a sense of the pelvis, the tail is dropping down, the shoulders are away from your ears. So you're feeling more alert in your body, but in a relaxed way. Then we just want to notice perhaps feeling the breath in the body. So on the breath in, noticing where the body is expanding out, and on the breath out, noticing where in the body the breath is drawing in. And in this position here, as you're focusing on feeling the breath in the body, then on the inhale, the idea would be that you feel the hands moving with the breath in the rib cage and the tummy. And then on the exhale, you can start thinking about lightly engaging the abdomen back towards the spine. So that deep lumbar support starts to come in as you actively draw the navel back. And once you've kind of established a breathing pattern that feels steady and smooth, so obviously it always takes a little bit longer to get people into that comfortable breathing pattern, they've arrived, you feel calmer in yourself, your breath is lengthening naturally, then I would invite you to bring your hands into a prayer position. And on the exhalations, pressing the hands in and also pressing down into the feet at the same time. So there's this connection with the earth and a sense of coming in. And as you press the hands in, you might notice then the core just becoming a little more active. And then on the exhale, releasing it. So exhale, press in, inhale, release. So there's this idea that we're coming more into ourselves, more connected, and by having the hands almost in contact with the midline, there's a sense that we're coming in through that exhale in the body. I can feel even a little lift in my pelvic floor, so there's engagement happening. Then I'm just going to invite the arms to move. So the first thing that I want to do is focus on releasing the tension around my shoulder girdle and the thoracic spine. So taking some nice smiling movements with the hands. Imagine you're drawing a smile with your fingertips across the body. And your breath is quite natural at this point. So you're aware that you're breathing in, aware that you're breathing out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're moving the hands with one breath and then the other. And then on an exhale, turning to one side, just come back. So with the next exhale, turn to one side and then come back. And you might notice that your hands go away from your midline as you turn. So just explore that a few times, keeping your pelvis facing forwards, but you're going to be lightly drawing it with you a little bit. Maybe the knees are going to bend a little bit and then you come back. And then try to keep the hands more in the midline as you turn. So on the exhale, you're turning with the midline. And then you come back for a few breaths, loosening up around those shoulders, and then keep the hands in the center and turn on the exhale. So it's a very different movement, much more contained. So try that again. Once on each side, let the exhale take you one way, come back, breathe freely, and then wait for the exhale to take you the other way. And then when you're ready, just come back and release. Have a little shake out. And we're going to do, again, this is loosening up. If you take a hold of your elbows and draw some figures of eights, you take the figures of eights in front of you and then you take them up towards the sky, lifting them up in the direction of the sky and then working them down again. So really coming into that shoulder region, the mid-spine, waking up the thoracic, keeping my head fairly fixed so I'm not looking around. Everything is fairly contained from the pelvis down. So again, there's a little bit of wiggle, but it's not too much that I'm swaying all over the place. This is much focused in my shoulder region. I'm just working it down. And then when you're ready, you can just let that go. Just take a few moments. Notice how you feel. And then bring your hands onto your shoulders and start to explore opening up with the elbows. And again, so the breath is quite free with these movements. I'm not really trying to control my breathing to my movement. But on an exhale, I'd like you to turn. And then again, come back through the free movements. And on the exhale, you turn again. And then you might like to release the arm. The next time you turn, release the arm behind you. And then come back. Exhale, release the other arm. And at a certain point, then you might like to release the arms completely, but work with the arms going forwards and back. And you can start coming into actually, you could do this with the elbows first. So you're taking them up and away and up and back and over. And then you take it into more of a backstroke thing if that feels okay for your shoulders. Now you're going to notice more of this open twisting coming in. On an exhale, look over one arm. And then go again through the movements across your arms. And then exhale the other arm. So just pausing, and then see if you can go the other way. So one arm comes forwards, one arm comes back. You can bend your knees in between. And then both arms, one arm's in front of you, one arm's behind. Exhale, look along your back arm, or keep your head in a neutral position if that vertigo is a worry. And then again, just the other way. And one arm comes behind you, one arm's in front, and just checking in with that gaze. So you take a moment to explore the rotation and then come back. And let yourself shake out. So just take a few moments to tune in to what's happening around this shoulder region. So you've had a good chance to mobilize and warm up that upper spine.
I feel warm and it's really nice. It's like a good activation, I think.
Yeah, you can feel
I like this state. Yeah.
Yeah, the circulation that's happening in
that.
Yeah. Sort of trying to get those joints mobilized. Going to really help you then when you come into doing so-called deeper twists.
And okay, sorry, Helen, you know, when you're doing this, so the both arms have to be vertical or diagonal? It's vertical like that, not diagonal.
Yeah, across the body, yeah. Across. So one arm in front, one arm behind. But some people might, you could do it like this as well. You could have your arms away and then turn, and then inhale and come back, and then exhale. But I just like the kind of, you know, you're kind of just allowing that mobility to take you into the twist. So anybody who's on that cautious side is probably going to be a little less rangy. And the twisting is going to be there, but it's just going to be a little more gentle. They're not going as deep, they're not going as far into those twists, but there's still something that they can do there, even if they keep their arms more in this position, you know, so the levers aren't coming in as much to put that strain on the spine.
Sorry, is this could be like the start and activation class for beginners? Yeah,
like limbering into twists.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we're moving on from there, then thinking about some a nice way to bring in a twist, bringing the legs in. You step one foot forwards and then you turn towards that side. And then you step the other foot forwards, take a breath in, exhale, turn the other way. So you're walking and twisting with towards the leg. So this is like towards the midline. You're not crossing over, but it is coming into more of an idea around a fixed frame. And if you just pause for a moment on the exhale, then really lengthen out into that, and then inhale and go again. So slow motion walking with a little twist coming in there. It's really good for balance. Great place if we're starting to think about something like Paravritti Trikonasana, where you're coming in, and you can take this even further, raising the back foot off the ground and taking it into balance if that's something that's available to you. So you can play with the rotation, but also have a little bit of a balance in there as well. And then if you just come back for a moment, have a little shake out. I'm just going to show you one more variation you can do from that standing. So this is if we're okay with balance, and you could do it with a hand on the wall as well, just kind of staying on the one side. Otherwise, you're stepping the knee up, and then you place the hand on the knee and you press into it on the exhale as you turn. And then inhale, lower the foot down. Exhale, lift up. Breathing in, exhale, the hand comes on, and turning to the other way. So you're taking the walk into a kind of twist balance. And you could have it quite dynamic. So those people who are new, let's say, you place one hand on the wall, you bring it back. You'd probably focus more on one side and then do the other side.
So that would be a closed frame twist.
That's a closed frame twist, but it's not static. we're keeping it moving. So it's good preparation for working into the closed frames, but I'm not really putting too much of a leverage into it. What I want to focus on is the hand and knee pressing in as I turn, and that comes into the midline through the abdomen. Pelvis is quite fixed because the knee and the hand press in. There's less range, less space for the pelvis to go. Does that make sense? A little bit of effort there, hand and knee, brings greater stability into this lumbar region here. So it's just ideas really, you know, if you're thinking about moving into those closed frames, where you can start planting them a bit earlier on in a class situation. Okay, so we'll just take a moment, little forward bend in between just to counterpose. So either to a chair, sole, or release the hands down, just take a moment, maybe have a little sway from side to side. And when you're ready to come up, bending the knees, lift your chest, exhale, rise to stand. Okay, so I just want to show you working with a twist and a wall. And again, I'm thinking of prepping for things like seated poses, but these are great alternatives for people when seated isn't an option. So you want to have your arms up in front of you, and on an exhale, you turn to face the wall, and on the inhale, you come back. On the exhale, you turn to face the other wall. So there is a bit of twisting, pulling going on here. Knees are bending, turning. So the inhale is back to center, and the exhale, finding the wall. Doesn't have to be both hands. It could be one arm that finds the wall. The other hand can cross over your body. So you're finding a way to turn in the direction of the wall. And then in between, if you like, on an exhale, lower your bottom, coming into a chair pose. Breathe in to come upright. Exhale, turning towards the wall. Inhale, raise the arms. Exhale into chair pose. Inhale, lifting up. Exhale to the wall. So combining this thoracic expansion, rotation with some legs. Again, coming into the midline, the chair pose. And just try that once more. And this is really nice preparation for things like a chair into a twist. So, you know, this is one way that somebody could come into that or prepare for it. And then eventually over time, they could think about bringing the hand across the body and you're working exhale, inhale. So I'm trying to keep it quite dynamic and moving so that we're getting that mobility in place, ready for some more static explorations of twists. So again, whenever you feel ready, find your forward fold once more, rest onto a chair or release down the back of the legs. Have a little wiggle along the backs of your hamstrings and just slowly bring yourself up when you're ready. Okay. Now, in terms of standing postures and twists, one of the twists that I do is a wide leg twist. So we have more of the open frame. And just thinking about those feet positions. Now, if you're using a chair in practice for this, you could have the chair out in front of you so that when you fold, you're not folding low, you're still able to keep the length along the spine. The other option to have is bolster or block, and you place it between the legs. So this is one way that you could incorporate chair, floor, or prop as you come into the twist. Now, we were talking about those feet positions earlier. So for more containment, we want the toes to be in as opposed to out. So if you're hypermobile, then when you turn the toes out, you're outwardly rotating the hips. there's a bit less support in the legs than when you turn the toes in, the outer thighs. There's just a little bit more engagement in the legs when the toes are in that more contained place. And for some people, like we were saying, their stance is going to be much narrower. So if they have lower back pain issues, then coming to a chair, legs in a hip distance, and working more in this sort of plane, rather than having the legs wide and putting all of that extra strain underneath on top of the pelvis and the lumbar spine. So you either have a chair or a prop, or you're going to come to the floor. On a breath in, the arms move away. On the breath out, you fold either to the chair or your prop. And allowing, if it's comfortable for your neck and your shoulders, to release the head down. And then on a breath in, you want to come to the fingertips, so the arms are long. So it's like you're making a tabletop with your spine. So if you're working towards chair, it's more upright along the spine. And then the fold will be more parallel, more neutral along the spine. So you're not letting that head dip down, unless you're okay to let the head drop down, and then you lower your head in the direction of the chair. So coming onto the fingertips, then you find a long spine. And then on the exhale, you're opening one arm up towards the sky. You breathe into the space that you found in your body. And then on the next exhale, you lower the hand down. You take a breath in, find length. On the exhale, draw the navel back towards the spine as you open and turn to the other side. So you're going to notice there's a shifting. You want to press into your feet as you go into these twists. It's not just the spine that's taking us there. The more we have happening in other parts of the body to support the rotation, then we're less likely to put that extra strain on the spine. So thinking about rounding through the feet, drawing the navel back towards the spine, lifting up. Now, sometimes people have neck and shoulder issues. You want to place that hand on your lower back and turn maybe the head towards the shoulder, or keeping that head in a neutral position. And if we're doing this in a micro movement way, then maybe we're going to start here, and on the exhale, turn, pause on the inhale. On the exhale, turn again, pause on the inhale. So, just you can break it down into micro movements once you've had a chance to explore some of this more dynamic range. Just thinking about even taking that further. So sol, for example, and sometimes I teach this anyway to my students. So if you just come back for a moment, have a little shake. You can do the same twist, but just have it upright. So the arms move away from the body on the breath in, and then on the exhale, you're literally kind of wrapping yourself around the spine as you turn. And then if it's okay for the gaze to go along the back arm, you can take your gaze that way. So the breath in is out, the breath out is around, abdomen draws in. Now thinking about those shoulders again, you might want to take the arms around the body as you go, rather than have the arms away from you. Or you could release one arm behind you and encourage a nice bit of space across the shoulder as you turn. So there's loads of different ways you can play with the same shape, and depending on what's happening, shoulders, neck, hips, even if we're doing this with the legs more narrow, you can still encourage similar movement. And it's the exhale that turns you into the shape. The inhale is a chance to find space, to find length, to extend into the shape. So often I will emphasize the space across the chest and the heart area, as the exhale then encourages the expansion through the navel. Okay, so let's just shake that out. Now, counter poses for twists in between, if you're holding them for a little while, could be like a little bit of a shake out. I think a forward bend is always nice. Depending on what's happening with the legs, you could always kick those out. If you're doing a flow, you might want to come through a downward dog. come and rest into child's pose, and then come up again. So, you know, there's ways to sort of just release any maybe effort or tension that's built as a result of that experience. Are you okay with that?
Or just kind of a little rest, isn't it? Just
a little rest, yeah, coming back to mountain, but it's sensing in your body, you know, what do I need to do? So for me, I just feel like a bit of a knee bend might be quite nice. So I'm
thinking I'm going to put all this in my self-practice when I'm fit enough to get up and do it, because it seems like I can watch this again, can't I?
Yeah. So if you had a little sequence, for example, and you'd just taken that twist here, it's quite open. You want to bring it back to the midline, and then you could do a couple of rounds of chair pose, for example, and just have, you know, mindful, slow knee bend. Abdomen draws in on the exhale, coming up on the inhale. And through that, you're kind of just getting that mobility back into your ankles again. So it's just being sensible, really, that, you know, people aren't here for too long, or they're here for too long, and they get to come back to a neutral position and rest before the next inquiry. So just yes, Lisa, go on.
Resting anywhere, in child's pose preferably.
Depends how you sequence things. So say, for example, you wanted to bring in a down dog, you could walk into a down dog, have a little stretch out, and then bring the knees down. And you could always do some rounds of cat and cow, and then rest into child's pose, and then slowly bring yourself up again and ready for the next standing pose. So it depends how you teach as to what goes in between those things. If it's a chair-based practice, they're going to sit in the chair for a few moments, be with the breath, notice the effects on the system. I just want to visit the Parivriti Trikonasana. So this idea of here, so obviously this is the starting point for that twist. Another really great one, I just did this yesterday, so it's a newsflash. Newsflash, hot off the press. With a wall though, so this is great if you have access to a wall, and I think it's really, really, really useful stuff. So you'd have your one leg out in front of you. It doesn't have to be a very big stance. Front knee is bent, and your hip, there's a little bit of space, maybe about that, maybe a few inches from your hip to the wall. And then you bring your hands up against the wall, and you look along the one arm, and then the front arm, and then you release the arms, you swap the feet over, and you're against the wall there. So you take a breath in on the exhale, and turn to face the wall. Inhale, exhale, move. So you can do it much slower than that, or you could literally do it like you're kind of there and then you're there. Obviously there's quite a bit of twisting going on in the pelvis. And then once you're experienced or playing with that, then lifting up and down. So really, I think this would be fantastic preparation if you had access to a wall. If you don't, then obviously there's other ways for something like this, for moving into Parivriti Trikonasana. So just anything where you're then getting the body ready for this kind of position here. Now, Parivriti Trikonasana is a fixed frame, and my approach would be to have a block or a chair. So Sol, you might like to, you could do this to the wall as well, at the top of a chair or a block. And it depends on where people are as to where that block goes as well. So at the moment, I've got my left foot out in front of me. My back foot is firm down on the ground. Doesn't need to be a big step. And I'm going to place my right hand on the left side. So I do this in Trikonasana as well. I just do it a different way. It's the same hand. So you come down into Parsvottanasana and find your block, or it's to the ground. or we're coming to the chair. And then my left hand's staying on my sacrum because I want to make sure my sacrum feels even. It's not tipping. A little bit of contact there with my sacrum. And then on the exhale, I'm going to turn left side towards the left. So if I just swap over for a moment, come down and then turning. So this is coming across the midline. Now that arm can be up against a wall. So Sol, if you want to look for a moment, you could be up against a wall and you're turning towards the space behind you. It might be on a chair, might be on a block. Sometimes people will cross the block over their body, which is a really, really closed frame, or on the same side as the hand and then turn. And then the arm moves up towards the sky, if that feels okay for the shoulders. What I tend to say is you take the arm up towards the sky, and if you begin to feel tension building around your neck and shoulders, maybe just wave the arm away a little bit or place it on your lower back. And then the last thing is the head, if that feels okay. So coming back, you want to reverse it. You're coming back through. Find counter pose for a moment. And then bring yourself up. So I'll do the other side and I'll just talk you through the breath because I feel like I'm kind of showing you these spaces, but I haven't really given you much breath instruction. So just move my chair here. So I'm going to step my left toes out a little, take a step forwards with the right foot. I'm going to bring my right hand onto my lower back. Let's take a few moments to breathe in. So just notice my front knee. That's my default. A little bit of a bend there. You have to instruct that because a lot of people will go back into the knee, but just that little softening in the knee. So my right hand's on my lower back. I'm going to cross over the body with my left hand and take a breath in. And on the exhale, I'm going to fold over my right leg, either to the top of the chair or to the wall or to the floor or a block. I'm just finding a place where I can release. And I like to try and encourage a few moments to settle the body into this forward fold. So I'm not forcing it, I'm not overstraining. My hand that's coming down is nice and relaxed on the ground. My hand on my lower back is relaxed. I'm feeling a stretch along my front leg. Then I'm going to lift my spine as I breathe in. And on the exhale, turning towards the front leg. And then a breath in, and then exhaling and turning, draw the navel in towards the spine. Breath into my top shoulder, breath into my chest, breath out, the abdomen draws in. Turning slowly. Maybe the top arm as I exhale moves up. I feel a bit limited on this side, so I'm just going to bring that a little bit further back. I have more range if I'm more upright. I can find that rotation is more comfortable than being in the low twist. And coming down, again, I'm going to do it on an exhale, down into that forward bend. I'm going to release both hands if that feels comfortable, releasing through the crown of the head. And then as I breathe in, bending the front knee, and on the exhale, rise to come up. Step the feet together, releasing that hip, because there's a lot going on in that hip socket to keep you in that fixed position. So that would be one way that I would approach the standing Parivriti Trikonasana. So that's the revolved triangle. Okay, so bringing it down towards the ground, or Sol, you could come and sit into a chair. If you'd like to walk your hands down the body into a downward facing dog, take a moment to stretch up through your hips. So Sol, you could do down dog with the chair, hands on top of the chair, feet underneath your hips, and take a moment to stretch along from the crown of your head up to the tail. And then on the exhale, from the tail down the back of the legs through your heels towards the earth. And when you're ready, from the down dog position, bending your knees, coming to the floor. And from the chair, just walk your feet a little closer so that you can do a few rounds of a cat-cow. So as you exhale, hips roll back. And on the inhale, you're scooping forwards and up. And just take a few rounds of this gentle posture to release effort along your spine, your shoulders. Perhaps noticing that stretch coming in around your lower back. And then I'd like you to transition onto back of the body. So if you're on the ground, just coming to rest onto your back. If you're not coming onto your back, coming to rest onto a chair, make sure you have support underneath your feet. And if you're on the ground, you might like a very gentle support underneath your head, like a folded blanket. So depending on where you are, we'll just take a few moments to rest, come back into the breath. Let your hands be on the ground if you're lying down. If you're seated, just let your hands rest onto your lap. And with each exhale, just invite a little pressing action into your feet and into your hands. And then on the inhale, release. So as you exhale, you're pressing into the feet and into your hands, keeping your back in contact with the ground if you're lying on your back. If you're on a chair, you just want to be a little bit away from the back of the chair so you're not collapsing through the spine towards the seat behind you. You sense that you can have this feeling of you're coming into your midline here, gathering navel back towards the spine as you exhale. On the inhale, gently, gently release. And when you're ready, from the ground, just let the arms move away from you. And if you're seated in a chair, bring your arms out at shoulder level, so they're away from your body. And then bring your hands so that they meet in front of your face. If you're lying down, your fingertips point up. If you're on a chair, your fingertips are pointing straight ahead. And on the exhalation, you're going to lower one arm in one direction. The top arm slides along the bottom arm. On the inhale, you take the fingertips up towards the sky. And on the exhale, you lower the other way. So the top arm slides along the bottom arm. So if you're seated, it's more of a out to the side, and your one arm bends and strokes along the arm that's moving away from you and straight. So if you're not sure, you can always just take a look. And just complete the round that you're on. And bring the knees in over your tummy. And so if you're on the ground, bring your knees over your tummy, just have a little roll from side to side with your hands lightly on your shin bones. And if you're on a chair, a little roll from side to side through your feet. Or you could come into a more of a forward bend and just have a little sway across your shoulders and across your hips. Okay, so we're going to explore the abdominal twist, Jatari Paravritti or Jatara Paravritti, from the ground, the arms away. Now, doing a few rounds dynamically with the feet and the knees together. Where the exhale, the knees go one way. If it's comfortable for your neck, the head rolls the other way. And the knees don't need to come all the way down. You could have a block or 2 blocks or a cushion there. Inhaling to come back, exhaling to go the other way. So what I tend to do is I try to stack my feet. If I'm doing knees together, in fact, if you have a block, just place the block between the knees so you have a bit more inner thigh engagement. And then you can take to one side and the head rolls away. So this is going to be great for beginners because you'll have this inner thigh engagement, which inevitably is going to bring some support into the pelvis, into that lumbar region, and they're just kind of working a little bit more into the core as well, rather than just allowing the knees to flop from side to side. So it just gives them that kind of feedback, what's happening in their body. From a chair, it's a little different. You might place a block, a thicker block or 2 blocks or a rolled blanket between the knees, and as you exhale, you're turning one way. It's much more upper torso movement stuff as you're coming in, but you can still get that inner thigh engagement of moving from one side to the other. So if you take the block out for a moment, I mean, there's so many different variations you can do in the abdominal twist. You can have your feet a bit wider. You probably come across this and you roll across the feet. So there's more of a zigzaggy movement rolling across the feet. And if I was, so you could do this from an upright position as well, kind of rolling here. So that's another way that you could modify the pose if people are okay to come to the ground. This would be okay in pregnancy as well, kind of keeping the chest lifted so you're not lying down. Okay, but I just want to kind of come to the pose a little bit more, let's say slightly more strict. So if I'm kind of working with people and I just want to make sure they're getting in a little more safely into the pose, then the arms are away from the body and I tend to lift the pelvis up. So taking it dynamically to begin helps us to get familiar with the movement, loosen up tension around the hips, the pelvis, and then lifting the pelvis up and taking it to one side of the mat. So I'm making space, and then you can bring the knees over the tummy or keep the feet on the floor. The arms don't want to be any higher than the shoulders, and you lower the feet, sorry, the knees to the side that you've made the space. And you can place a blanket or a block for the knees if they don't comfortably reach the ground. And then the back arm is either away from the body, or if that back shoulder isn't on the ground, you cushion it. And sometimes people really struggle with this open position here, so I get them to just rest that top arm on their body. So the legs are supported, the other arm's away, and then they can either have the head away from the front arm or look along the front arm. They could do micro movements with the head exhaling one way, inhaling the other. And this is where I would be focusing on the abdomen coming in towards the spine on the exhalation, so that you don't really feel like you're doing anything. So it's giving them that instruction. The exhale, draw the abdomen in. And as you breathe in, opening up, finding that space across the chest. So if you had the arms away from the body, just really encouraging that openness across the chest, through the back of the body as well, between the shoulder blades. And then coming back on the exhale, bringing the knees in close over the tummy. It's more supportive than having the knees further away. If people are okay in their core and in their back, this movement's okay. But if they have a weak back, they want to bring them in closer to the midline to come back. And then there's just more support coming in over the tummy. So bringing the pelvis to central for a moment, and then taking it to the other side. And what I want to do for this side is I'll just do the chair variation. So again, we aren't moving the pelvis as much when we're on a chair, but we can do things like place the block between the feet and have the pelvis in a slightly more fixed position and explore turning with that thoracic on the exhalation. And you can bring the arms around the body, you can massage the top arm away. And very much when you're in that position, then you're focusing on the exhale and the abdomen, anchoring down through the sit bones. So try not to lift up through the sit bones. And then on the inhale, finding that space across the chest and along the spine through to the crown of the head. So trying to keep that upright plane along the spine. And coming back when you're ready. So if you're on the ground, knees come in over the chest. If you're on a chair, you just take a moment to rest over your thighs. And then coming up. So that's one way that we can look at our abdominal twist. thinking about making space. So by lifting up the pelvis and moving it, you're not putting as much pressure on the sacrum to pull, or the SI joints to take the knees to one side. So that little action, lifting the pelvis up, taking it over, knees come in, you're more likely going to be able to stack pelvis on top of the joints on top of one another rather than doing this. I think this is a really lovely way to mobilize and prepare and keep it moving and dynamic, but to stay there requires quite a lot of back strength and spinal, let's say, a healthy spine. Whereas if you make that space, you bring the knees in, you're taking over to one side, then my pelvis is more likely to stack on top, so it's a safer position for the sacrum. And then I can breathe a bit more freely without having to feel like I'm being pulled across the hips. It's more of the emphasis on the twist in the thoracic, whereas when the knees move away, there's more going on in the pelvis. And the counter pose generally for a lying twist is to bring the knees in over the tummy. You can stretch your feet up towards the sky. You can have a little shake out. Okay. So obviously in between these things, I might do a bridge. So it's just kind of thinking about, I'm sort of feel like I'm doing a bit of a whistle stop tour of twists, moving through a practice here, but resting is always good, just kind of taking a few moments to pause with the legs away from the body and just noticing how it feels to be kind of open and noticing what's happening with the breath. Any other, this sort of position, you know, this threading of the needle might be a nice thing to do before a lying twist or even the seated twist, because of the tension around the hip area. So something like this, you could do this from a chair as well. Can be nice preparation then for those seated twists. So it's thinking about what areas need to be mobilized and stabilized then before we come into a pose for a longer period of time. And coming up safely, and we'll just explore seated. Is that okay? Can I go into seated? Have you got any questions at the moment? Or we can do questions at the end. Happy to move on. Okay, so from a seated position then, on the ground or in a chair, and possibly a block or a folded blanket might be better because you can distribute the body weight a bit more across a folded blanket. Sometimes the block, when you do a seated twist, it's almost, it moves a bit with you. Whereas if you have a way to elevate the pelvis that it doesn't move, then that might be better. It depends what you have access to in the classes. But bringing those feet out in front of you. So pretty much as a general rule, when I'm getting ready for seated poses, I'll just do a little bit of massage along the legs, just to try and loosen up again and get into new position in the body. Notice how you feel. So Dandasana is a good posture for coming into the midline, pressing the feet away, hands onto the ground on the exhale, and then releasing on the inhale. So that is core engagement. And then lifting as well on the axial extension. And doing this on the chair, it's very similar to what we did earlier. You're pressing through the feet and the hands come onto the thighs. So you can repeat the kind of the little prompts, let's say, throughout the class in whichever position you're then in. So hands and feet, really good, pressing the feet away. Okay. So let's think about this Lord of the Sage, I think it is, Sage 3. Now, a nice way to come into this would be to be wide leg. And to not think about this position with one knee bent, but just to think about the legs being open. It doesn't need to be as wide as this, it can just be like shoulder distance and the feet want to be relaxed. So coming from position with the hands on the ground. So if you're on a chair, I'd recommend the knees are just a little bit wider, more like a wider squat position. And your hands rest beside you. And you're lifting up through your crown of head. Just wait for those legs, like they really want to get you. They really want to grip. You have to wait and just try to let them relax a little bit so that you can then move more freely in your body. So on a breath in, taking one arm up and cross it over the midline to the other leg, and then walking the hand behind you as you exhale, turning the torso towards the space around you, and breath in, exhale to release. Hands come alongside you, breathing in, take the other arm up, exhale, cross the arm behind you, walk the other arm toward your spine, lift up, breath in, exhaling, turn. On the next exhale, releasing. So I really enjoy exploring twists in different ways. So thinking about something like this before you even come into a sage or the Matsyendrasana, it's a lovely pose to progress to. So the breath in, arm lifts up, breath out, arm crosses over, you walk the hand behind you and it props you up a little bit. So you could do this with the legs straighter as well. So if anybody is struggling with the back injury or sacroiliac, having those feet more parallel and crossing over, and the hand just props you up a little bit. So as I press in on the breath in, lengthening the spine on the breath out, abdomen draws in towards the spine, twisting. I often talk about wringing a cloth as you exhale. Think of all that lovely nourishment that you're bringing to your spine and releasing the tension like you're wringing a cloth and getting rid of the waste. Coming back and then exhaling in the other direction. So that's one way that you could prepare for the sage pose. Little forward fold in between. Find your feet for a moment, coming up. And then with the sage, it's Marichai. So bringing the foot up. Now here, depending on the body shape, we might want a bit more space. So that's why this kind of wide leg position is going to be quite useful for people. And the same with the knee. So if we're feeling compressed in the knee, if we've got any issues in the knee, same with the ankle, just having it a little bit further away. So it's not like you're hugging it right in and exacerbating any of that tension or discomfort that you have in those joints. Then you can let your hands just rest there, wait for the other leg to relax, taking a breath in, lifting. On the exhale, turning in the direction of your front knee. On the breath in, lifting through crown of head. On the exhale, turning, abdomen draws in, maybe that hand walks behind you and you're starting to explore a little bit of leverage, which can be intensified if you bring the elbow across and bring the knee and the hand, the elbow against one another. If that feels safe along your spine, doesn't exacerbate any pain or discomfort along your spine, your tummy feels okay, then, and the shoulders, thinking about lifting on the inhale, exhaling and turn. Pushing the other foot away can be useful as well. Just a sense that there's a grounding there in that back leg. And then coming back on the exhale and swapping over. So I'll just do the other side from a chair. So have a little play. And I mean, it depends on what props you have available. You could cross over, or you could bring the knee up. I mean, that's quite tight on the body and crossing over. But if you had another chair in front of you, then you could definitely look at turning or holding that hip there, a bit of hip stability, hip strength as you turn to the other side. You could also have a bolster underneath the foot. Just do the other one. And then on the exhale, you're turning, so you could extend the other leg away and turn with the bent knee. So very, very similar in terms of the action. We're just raising the pelvis much higher up off the ground. And you have to have that foot then on a support because it's a bit low otherwise. Although you can do it. It's just more difficult to feel like you're grounding through that foot. It's good to have something to press into. So a couple of blocks to help take you into that twist on the exhalation and release. And then forward fold. When you've been doing seated work and those hip flexors start to get a bit tight, then some sort of back bending, so lifting up the chest. If you're on a chair, you could always lift the hips up off the ground. And if you have been seated on the floor, I would be doing a couple of rounds of bridge. So I would be coming from that twist, maybe I'd do a forward fold for a moment just to release that effort along the back of the body there. And then coming onto the back, just a couple of rounds just to open up into bridge. So bridge pose is a great place to end after you've done seated postures, to bring in a little bit of extension and open out the hip flexors, but I'd be tempted to keep it dynamic because we've probably been fairly static in those seated twists. And then you could always do whatever variations you want to do. Bring the knees in, hug, and take a moment to rest. Maybe the hands come back over the body. Roll your head a little from one side to the other. Just try to let go of any unnecessary effort in your body. Sighing the breath. Take a few moments to notice how you feel. And just in your own time, maybe there's a stretch you'd like to take. Have a little wiggle around your legs. Maybe up towards the sky or out in front of you if you're seated. Flicking, shaking out through your limbs. And just taking your time to gently come back into your day. And slowly, slowly lifting up. Okay.